Good morning, folks. Hope everyone's doing well. Yeah, before I get my day started here, I thought I'd talk to y'all about a subject that I don't talk a whole lot about because it really isn't that important to me overall. And it's not something I think a lot about, I mean, but if I'm being honest, like we all should be, and it's always in the back of our mind in one way or another. It just comes up because it's just a part of our daily life, just especially as Americans, you know, and just you need it to survive to a certain extent, unless you are, how do I say it, just I don't know, completely off grid, completely God sufficient, self sufficient in that way. So yeah, I'm talking about money, and I usually don't talk a lot about this, like I said, because it's just it in my life personally. It's not something that I've been motivated by. I understand that it's necessary, but it's just never been one of my main motivations in life. So it hasn't been that important to me overall. People say, yeah, right. No, I mean, just listen for a second here, okay? I didn't plan to talk about this, and I really didn't even want to, but it just keeps coming up. And whether it's conversation, whether it's things people send me, just what's in the headlines now with the markets and just the manipulation, the the evil that men and women do in order to gain this, in order to keep it, it just keeps coming up. It's just always there, lurking in the background. And I have talked a little bit about unjust scales and unjust balances because I don't think that's right. And I've said it, you know, a few times recently and continue to say it. Yeah, the rich get richer and the poor get poorer because that's the way the system is set up. That's what the people that set this, the things, the entities that set this whole thing up, that's what they intend. And that's how they um, keep it going. So the rich get richer and the poor get poorer. And even Eric Hale talked about it last night in his message a little bit. The unjust scales, the manipulation of the markets, the up and down, the how people, without getting too technical within the market itself, the big short, margin call, you know, just Wall Street in general, and how they're able to short the markets to keep their rich billionaire buddies and friends, richer and from losing too much while everybody else loses their shirt, you know, um, on stocks and their investments and so forth because they didn't buy when they should have bought, they didn't sell when they should have sold, and it's just it's unjust, unjust scales and unjust balances, But I guess the reason I'm talking to y'all about this and the reason it just kind of keeps coming up is because people, will literally sell their souls for this stuff, gold, silver, money in general. And it's just one of those things where if you watch like people like Drew Bloom or George Gaston or people like that, with exposing false prophets, false teachers, manipulators, charlatans, scammers, wolves in sheep's clothing, whatever. The people that are out there selling the gospel, the people that are out there uh, selling, I don't know what, basically selling the secrets of heaven, selling the kingdom keys, and all the rest of this stuff, and they come up with all of these manipulative teachings and plans and so forth. And the one thing they all have in common, doesn't matter who they are, where they live, whether in the United States or outside, is they all charge fees for their teachings, for their false teachings, I should say, but for their manipulations. It's just like, yeah, we'll tell you how to access the throne room of heaven or whatever. Or we'll tell you how to do this, and we'll tell you how to get miracles in your life, and we'll tell you how to, be able to, be successful in the kingdom and out of the kingdom and all the rest of it for a fee, for a price. Nobody's going to tell you anything for free. They're just going to, it's for a fee. Come to the conference for this fee. Sign up online for this fee. Go to this for this fee. Whatever it is, buy my, not so much CDs anymore, whatever, but, the webinars, the seminars, and so forth. Everything always costs. I know people are saying, well, yeah, because that's, nothing's for free. I get all of that, right? But where is the gospel for sale? Where is it for sale? I don't find anywhere in the Bible that it says the gospel's for sale. I can think of where Peter says, gold and silver I have not, but what I do have, is Jesus. What I can give you is Jesus. I can't give you anything else but him, and that should be sufficient. That should be enough, you know. And I think about how Jesus himself said, you know, what does it profit a man to gain the whole world and lose his own soul, right? So all of these people, they're constantly after the money. They're constantly after the gold. They're constantly after the silver. It's all we hear about. It's all people are talking about. And it just keeps coming up time and time and time again. They're even negotiating on the tariffs now, where, the president is bragging about everybody's kissing. I'll keep it clean, kissing his butt, basically, negotiating on the tariffs. And nobody wants to get hosed over. Nobody wants to lose their shirt in any deals or whatever. And they're scared that, they have to answer to their people. They're scared about what might happen to their country or their nation or whatever. And it's just a big racket. It's just a big scheme, It's like the mafia is in charge, of everything, It's just crazy how this is all going now. And some people I know are cheering it on. Yeah, 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 because we've been getting hosed over forever, and now it's time to get back at all these countries with all these tariffs or whatever. And the meanwhile, it tears down the whole global economy where everybody suffers, especially the little guy, especially the ones that are barely trying to make ends meet, because all of these tariffs, all of these taxes, everything that's going to make the major companies suffer, they're just going to pass it on down to the consumers by raising prices of products, and people won't be able to afford to live. They won't be able to afford to buy what they're used to being able to buy. I mean, even the Amazon was it Amazon CEO, I think? Yeah, I think he was the one that said, hey, if they put the hurting on us, then we're basically just going to pass it on down to the consumer, to where they just have to pay more for our products. They just have to pay more to shop, pay more to shop online, pay more to get things shipped to their homes or whatever, And I'm just thinking about all of this, and I'm just like, you know what? Thank you, Jesus. Thank you, Lord, that I am not motivated in my life so much by money. And I hope you aren't either. And I can honestly say that. And I think the reason is a few reasons, but going back, into my childhood, we just, like a lot of you, I'm sure, we just never had a lot of it. From the time I was 5 years old, I was a military brat. I was an army brat, and my dad did not make a lot of money in the army. He just didn't, because he started out, he made rank fast. He was motivated to be promoted quickly, and he was a great soldier. and he did everything he was supposed to do, and he provided for his family, and he was a good husband and dad and so forth. But he never made a lot of money, so we never got used to it. Now my brother and I never suffered. We were always taken care of. We were always provided for. The Lord always took care of our family. The Father always took care of our family and so forth. But my dad definitely did his part. There were many times where, some of you could probably relate to this. I mean, my dad would work two jobs, in the army, and he was a lab tech for a while, so he'd also work like part time at the hospital or whatever. I remember those times. I remember seeing him like, a lot of times he'd ride his bike to work because it wasn't that far or whatever the case may be. And other times I would see him like walking across this golf course, this huge golf course. We live in this apartment building, but there was this golf course not far from the area, and I would see him walk across the golf course, home from the hospital or whatever, after already being a soldier full time, because he worked very, very hard to provide and support for his family. And, I remember one time we were living in these apartments in Minnesota where my dad was assigned to a military interest processing station. Because people are like, well, why would the Army be in Minnesota? That's why. For recruitment, basically, military interest processing station. Like I said, he was a lab tech, at the time. And I remember us living in these apartments, and the only way we could afford to live in these apartments that were better than the apartments across the street. There was two of them. There was Pheasant Park on one side, which was pretty nice, and the other side was the Continental Village, which wasn't so nice. Well, we wound up moving into the Continental Village because of finances and just the economy or whatnot or whatever. But when we were living in the Pheasant Park apartments, the only way we could continue to afford to live there is if my mom and dad were also caretakers of the apartments. See, so my brother and I, we recognized all these things. I was too young at the time to work, and same with my brother legally anyway. So we just, we were just kids. We were, preteens, teenagers, and whatnot. But I remember witnessing, observing all this stuff. And so money was just never really that important to me because I never had it. I was never used to having it. I was just used to having what we needed. Like I said, we were always provided for. We were always taken care of. We never had the nicest stuff, but we weren't in rags either. If you know what I'm saying. I mean, we were provided for. We weren't poor, but we weren't rich. We were like total middle class on the lower scale though. And the reason I can say that is because when I was 14, I've been in the workforce off and on since I was 14 years old. I'm almost 55, okay? So I've been in the workforce a long time. If there is any Social Security left, if if there is anything, I should get something eventually. But regardless, I'm just saying. But when I was 14, I I got this job for working for the community. It was called Tree Trust, and it was basically, you know, improving park improvements and stuff like that. It was hard work, a lot of manual labor, like weed whacking, and like I said, improving parks, improving your community, and so forth, and just like I said, a lot of manual labor, painting, chipping paint, weed whacking, putting in the timbers around like the parks, like around, um, the monkey bars, the slides, the swings, and all the rest of that stuff, wood chips, all that stuff. Just trying to improve and make things look nicer, right? I was only 14 years old, but this job was specifically for low income families. Well, I qualified because my dad was in the army and he wasn't making that much. So I was able to benefit off of the fact and get a job at 14. And I saved up enough money that year to buy myself a bicycle, that I could ride to school and whatnot, that summer, working that job that summer. And I remember, being able to get the job because of my dad's income, you know, which reminds me, I was just recently approved for VA benefits, medical VA benefits, not only because of the Gulf War, but because of the income, because I checked into it. And it's just like, this is the way it works now. if you make too much money as a family income, or if you're not a veteran of some campaign or war or whatever, there's a chance that people will not get the VA benefits. Like I couldn't get the dental, but I could get the medical, and I was shocked. I got a phone call the other day, and it was the VA, and they asked me, if I wanted to set up an appointment. I'm thinking it's a prank call, man. I'm like, are you serious? Because I just applied maybe a week before. I didn't expect to get an answer that soon, you know, and because I just I just wanted to see. I was curious to see what was out there, what was available, and if I qualified. And sure enough, I did. I was really surprised. I thought for sure it's like, no, they're going to say we make too much money as a family, or they're going to say that some lame excuse, because that's the way it usually is. That's the way it's been with taxes when you file taxes every year. Well, you don't qualify this or qualify for that because you make too much money here, you make too much money there. It's like, are you kidding me? Are you serious? You're telling me I actually owe the government and I don't get a refund? Are you kidding me? I mean, where's the camera? Did they bring the camera back and I didn't know or something? But because this is the way the system's set up. There's loopholes in the system to keep the rich richer and the poor poor, right? But anyway, so all of that to say, that sometimes it works for you, but most of the time it can work against you, right? But I never been motivated by it. But I see so many people that are now, and people are sending me stuff, and I'm paying attention to certain stuff myself, and it seems like everything is all revolving around money. People can't get enough of it, and they are scared that they don't have it, and and it's almost like they gotta go grab that golden ring, and they gotta get what they can get while they can, because it won't be there later, and they're afraid and they're scared. So I guess one of the reasons I'm not motivated by money, I mean, I believe in working hard, I believe in having a strong work ethic or whatever, is because I've seen what it does to people. I've seen what it does to companies and businesses. I've seen how, and we see how so many people are getting laid off and losing their jobs, and how people's careers are over, like at the drop of a hat, you know, because of, the economy overall, and the layoffs and the unemployment and so forth. The things that they're hiding, that they're not telling us the truth about, but everyday Americans know that it's true. And I've also seen how people are scared to lose contracts. I've seen this firsthand just recently, where when they have a contract, whether it's a military contract, a government contract, or just a contract with a bigger name company or whatever, I've seen how when the visitors come in to see what's going on behind the scenes, and how their product is and how it's getting, made and shipped out or whatever, I've seen how when they know that the visitors are coming in, how smaller companies will deceive, okay, the contractors, those that are paying the money, for this smaller company to, I guess you could say, if not create, to improve their product. And I've seen how they manipulate it. I've seen how they deceive them. I see how they only show them what they want to show them, and not tell them the truth, and not, you know, um, not just be forthcoming and honest about it. And they would even say, in company meetings or whatever. I've seen this firsthand. I've been, I witnessed it not long ago, as a matter of fact. It's like, well, we don't want to show them this, and we don't want them to know this. So make sure that we have this and this done, and we can just show them what we want them to see, you know. And people say, well, there's nothing really wrong with that, because nobody really wants to know how the sausage is made. They just want to know, well, and maybe sausage isn't the best, analogy here, best example, because I know pork or whatever. But you get the gist. You get my general meaning here. Nobody wants to know how it gets made. They just want to see the end result. And it's just like, yeah. But at the same time, if you're deceiving people and not being completely honest with them about how it's being done, then that it's just it's simply deception. And the reason they're doing that is they're scared they're going to lose the contract. You lose the contract, you lose all this money. It's fear. So people are motivated by the fear of losing their money. They're motivated by the fear of losing their livelihood. And to be honest, that is a it's understandable from a human standpoint. I mean, fear uh, can be a good motivator if people, like, for instance, people don't commit crimes because they're afraid that they're going to get arrested and go to jail, right? Now, other people don't commit crimes because it's like that's immoral, it's wrong, it's against God's laws, it's against man laws, and I'm not going to do it. But some people, they just simply won't do it because they're like, I'm afraid I'm going to get caught. I'm afraid I'm going to get busted. I'm afraid I'm going to go to jail. So fear can be a positive motivator in certain ways to keep people out of trouble and to keep people from harming others. But for the most part, the people that live in fear because they're afraid of losing their jobs, or afraid of losing their livelihood, or afraid of losing money, they will compromise themselves, and it's a slippery slope, and they continue to compromise themselves, and then they compromise themselves a little bit more, a little bit more, a little bit more, and the next thing you know, they're worshiping money, and they're not worshiping God. They're not worshiping the Lord, our Lord and Savior Jesus Christ. They're worshiping money. They're completely and totally motivated by money. So I think some of these false prophets, false teachers, or whatever that we hear about today, they may have started out well. At one time, years and years and years ago, these mega church pastors or whatever else, they may have started out in some storefront somewhere. When they first got into the ministry, they loved the Lord, they loved Jesus, they loved people, they loved all of these, and they did it for the right reasons in the beginning. But then they got a big name. Then they got famous. They got well known. They were able to use social media to manipulate and to make a living where they don't actually have to work a real job or do it, especially these younger guys and gals, that are these false prophets, false teachers today, the ones that are still like in their 30s, 20s, 30s or whatever, I mean, it's just like they don't work a real job. They don't do anything. They're just social media influencers and then they get all this money from people donating to this and donating to that and helping them here and helping them there, and they sing their sad song and please help my family, please help my family, please help my family. It's like, just go get a job, man. Go do something with your life. Don't do something meaningful and purposeful. But no, they won't, because people are dumb enough and gullible enough and naive enough to just continue to send money in to their so-called ministry, and they just keep sending it in, PayPal, Cash App, whatever else, and it goes on and on and on, this vicious cycle, right? So when it comes to you know the manipulation scheme of all of this, there's going to be a price to pay soon. I don't know when, but eventually there's going to be even more exposure. And I mean, and Drew Bloom and people like him, they do a great job of exposing these people and putting it out there. But and I share a lot of his videos and so forth too, because it's important that, especially people that are new in the faith, people that are just now becoming Christians or whatever, or maybe their churches don't do anything to help them, their pastors, their disciples, there's no discipleship or anything like that. They can easily be deceived by these wolves in sheep's clothing or whatever. And getting back to what I was saying, I lost my train of thought for a second. These people that started out well, it's not how you start out, it's how you finish. And Lord gave me a word about that years ago. It's not how well you start, it's how you finish. Because a lot of people start well, but they don't finish well. So it's not how we start, it's how we finish. And like I said, so these people that are out there, these social media influencers now, or even these mega church pastors or whatever the case may be, they may have started out well, but they're not finishing well. And that's the danger. And then, like I said, People continue to compromise themselves. It's a slippery slope. And the next thing you know, well, the love of money is the root of all evil, as we know, not money itself. Money itself is a tool, it's neutral. It can be used for good or evil. Heard a pastor in Florida years ago preach on that. Very few pastors will preach on money in this way, but he did. And he absolutely nailed it. Like money is like a hammer or any other tool, that you use to create or build something or whatever. It's neutral. It could be used for good or used for evil. So with with knowing that, and if we understand that concept, then people won't worship money and they won't be motivated so much by money that they got to have money for everything. You got to have money for this, got to have money for that. I mean, I get it. You need money to buy groceries, you need money to pay bills, you need money to live, you need money to pay your rent, pay your mortgage. I get all that. I understand that. I'm talking about the people that just can never get enough of it because it basically becomes their God. And look at the examples they have out there, whether it's in government or whether it's in the church or whether it's just in general life, everyday life. Look at the examples that we see out there through sports, entertainment, music, whatever else. It's always about money, constantly about money. And I'm about to end this right here, okay, with these examples, all right? The thing that really got me motivated to do this video is a while back, I shared this too. I think it was on the other channel though, before they took it down, and I don't know where it is now. But I don't usually pay attention to the big names out there. Big name ministers, big name preachers, teachers, false prophets, false teachers. Except, like I said, when Drew Bloom does videos on them or other people expose them or whatever, and I'm aware of them and I know who they are, and I'll warn about them to a certain extent or whatever else. But I remember hearing this one where it always intrigues me when somebody doesn't have a name or nobody even knows who they are or whatever, but then they're willing to put themselves out there. And this really intrigued me. This was a firefighter, and he claimed to have a vision of hell one time. And I don't remember all of the details of it, but I remember this because I know quite a bit about music. Um, I just I grew up on it. I grew up listening to all kinds of music, still kind of do to a certain extent. I just remember certain things about music or whatever, so I was very familiar with this, and you're probably familiar with this song too in one way or another. But he said he had a vision of hell, and he said, like many people have had visions of hell or even heaven or whatever, or they claim to, they see different things, and they witness, they observe certain things and whatnot. And this would drive me nuts, just this alone. I mean, hearing this over and over and over and over again for all eternity, okay? I mean, this is crazy. But he said there was a song that they played in hell in his vision. I can't remember if he said he actually visited a vision or what. I can't remember. I think it was a vision. I don't recall. But anyway, this is what I remember of it. He said the song that they kept playing in hell constantly on repeat over and over and over again as people are being tortured, as there's screams and there's darkness and there's just all kinds of just horrific things, undescribable things happening, you know is the song Money by Pink Floyd. If people are familiar with that song, you probably are. It goes dum dum da dum 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 da dum 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 money. I'm sure people have heard the song or are familiar with it. Okay, he said that was the song because that's what motivated everyone. That at least what he saw in his vision, they were in hell because of their love of money. Because they loved money and they didn't love God. And so money motivated them in their whole life, you know, and that's ultimately what kept them away from Jesus Christ, from accepting Jesus Christ as their Lord and Savior, and put them in hell, was their love of money and what they were willing to do for it. And then I was reminded of this. I just sent this to a friend a few minutes ago because they actually started this out by sending me something with a meme or like not a meme, but a screenshot of the president with, talking about the tariffs and whatnot and how, and the trade and the negotiating and so forth and so on and all this stuff. And it just got me thinking, and then I started thinking about the other songs about money that have been put out there for like for the negative or the positive. Like Van Halen did a song years ago called "Big Fat Money," you know, where that's all they sang about was money. Big fat money, big fat money, big fat money. They just gotta have more and more and more money. And then there was, and then on the positive side of things, Striper, "In God We Trust," where the lyric basically starts out with, they say that money talks. If so, what does it say? Good question, right? You know, I mean, don't put your trust in money, you'll lose again and again. But it's like, so anyway, it's just the things that came to my mind about it. But I don't know, just wanted to talk about this, get this kind of off my chest because it just kept coming up over and over and over and over. I was getting emails, I was getting screenshots, I was getting text messages, I was getting, and it's just all in the news. And I really didn't pay too much attention to it yesterday. My wife and I, we worked out in the yard, fixed a fence, and all this different stuff, I mean, I didn't even really focus on it. I didn't even know what was going on until like last night, earlier this morning, because it's just too much. Sometimes you just got to, it's just too much, you just got to turn it off, take a break from it, whatever. But it's a huge motivating factor, and everybody's going to be paying attention, including myself. I'm not going to lie. I do, because I'm curious, I'm interested, and I want to know how to prepare. I want to know what to be ready for. So people are going to be paying attention to the markets this week, of course. It's like, it's going to go up, it's going to go down, what's going to happen, what's going to go on with these tariffs, what's going to go on with the trade, what's going to happen with China and the U.S., and, or is anybody going to acquiesce? Is anybody going to back down? Is it going to get better? Is it going to get worse? What's going to happen? And on and on and on it goes, because everybody's motivated by money. So my suggestion to you all is don't be motivated by money. We need it. It's a tool. It's a neutral tool. We need it to live. We need it to help each other, help our families or whatever. We need it for kingdom purposes, I mean, to help people in need, to help people, when tragedy strikes, when natural disasters hit, and all the rest of this stuff. You need it to get supplies out to people, to help people, and and to assist as much as possible. But don't worship it, don't love it. It's a tool. It's a neutral tool that could be used for both good and evil. So just look at it like that. It's a tool that is needed to help others. It's needed to help get the gospel out, and to help serve others, and just to assist as much as possible in whatever area it's needed in. So I know that's kind of convoluted, but you get the gist, I think. So anyway, that's it. So y'all have a good day, good rest of your weekend or whatever. And I said I just wanted to get this sermon out there, I guess, for lack of a better term. So I hope people got something out of it. All right, y'all take care. Have a good one. Bye bye.